I had to call the bank. Well,
It's 6 o'clock, so let's assemble ourselves here.
Which is surprising.
And I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. I think the attendance and voting sheet is going around. So keep passing that on around. And always be checking your emails for the approving vouchers via DocuSign, on a timely basis. Is there any public comment? No. Okay. Is there a motion for approval of minutes from 19 October 2023?
So moved.
second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, did you get that, Selena? Okay, that brings us to reports and updates. I'll turn it over to Mike for the superintendent report.
So happy November, everybody. It's been a busy month, and I'll talk about some of the things that have been happening over the last month. But we'll start with our enrollments. We have 1,412 students in the district, so that's 2 more than last time. We had students entering in Southwest Harbor and in Trenton. In terms of our staffing needs, they're slowly chipping away. Some positions are getting filled, particularly in a couple schools in gifted and talented. However, we are still in need of techs and a math intervention position, technology long-term sub, middle school long-term sub. So throughout the district, there are still some needs, but like I said, sort of slowly picking up some folks as we move along. In terms of the ed techs, one of the things I'm hoping to do this week with the staff in the central office is, this time of year we often get folks filling out substitute paperwork, and I don't know if some of them would be interested in ed tech positions, so making some cold calls on those is, I think, something that will be helpful. On my list, but I see it's we can wait and do reorganization later, so we'll do that in the budget. Some of the highlights from the past month, I'd like to start with a shout out to the MDI RSS crisis team. And the crisis team is made up of our social workers within the district, our guidance counselors here, who support at almost a moment's notice needs for our various schools, and will send out a notice and get people in our schools. And a couple of weeks ago, we not only had the events in Lewiston, we've also had a tragedy here within our district. And that team rose to the challenge and provided support for one of our schools. And then the next thing we know is we had the Lewiston event, and they were there and supporting teachers and supporting students. And I just want to shout out the work that they do. And they meet regularly to sort of debrief those instances and how they can best support the folks within their schools. And I asked them at that Friday of that week, making sure that they're taking care of themselves. But they're a tremendous group, and in all honesty, when I think about the group of schools within Hancock County, they are all there when there's support needed in any of our buildings. And so, just a shout out to the work that they do in supporting our staff and students, especially during our most trying times. Wanted to share some of the school highlights of things that are going around in our schools. At Connors Emerson, they recently were up in middle school. It was the 6th grade, was at the planetarium as part of the science curriculum. And if you heard in the news, they've been working on 3D printing a home, and so they got to see that house. And the 5th graders have been doing some work around community interviews, where they're going out in the community and asking some really interesting questions and picking up on listening skills. On the Cranberry Islands, actually this coming week, they're doing a kids cafe So if you find yourself out there, you can go out and see the students there. They also had Nate Shaw, who's actually from New York City. He's a musician from Brooklyn, and he can't remember how Gloria keyed into him, but he came out and did a music program and did songwriting with the Cranberry Kids a couple of weeks ago. At Frenchboro, they, in their science units, they are working on bones and identifying bones. And of course, you have a big range of kiddos there, of the 5, but they sent videos out. So they were learning video editing, and they did their long bone presentations on the skeleton that they had out there. Pretty good. They all did a great job. I watched them all. Over at Mount Desert, they've been doing projects in math around applied math, and they were doing some of the things that I saw was around 3D boxes, and they had to present their use of applied math in building those boxes. Matt said at the high school meeting that the MPA has been doing these little shout outs for positive stories for schools across the state regularly. And the one that they did recently was on our crowds at MDI games. In particular, the fact that after the games were over, the kids would come out and they would clap for the opposing team as they left, the officials, and the coaches. And so it was a shout out in terms of highlighting, the fact that the fans are just celebrating, hard fought games and clapping as they go. So that was really neat to see on the MPA site, the Maine Principals Association. Also, the civil rights team here at the high school wrote letters to students at Lewiston, so that was a pretty neat project. And of course, Matt talked about the state champs for football for the first time and cross country, and so that was really exciting. Over in Pematic, they do, oftentimes at our school, some of our schools are able to provide early morning drop-off for students, and one of the things they do at Pematic is called an early bird program, but no tech is allowed. If you're going to come in early, you can't be on your computer, so you're either reading or doing some puzzles or sort of a no tech time. And they also had a grade 4-5 poetry night. Of course, we've had Veterans Day, and so a variety of our schools honored veterans. In Trenton, they did a tea in the middle school, I wanted to say, and also on Swans, they invite their local folks into the school for lunchtime. Swans also have been doing, they do a 10 days walk to school, and they do this through October, and everybody walks to school and gets their 10 days in, so it's just sort of a good way of getting folks, number one, walking and out and about, and they do it before it gets too cold and then the kids can ride the bus. Trenton also did their fire prevention, and that's a sort of a really neat connection that a lot of our elementary schools do with our local volunteer fire departments, and they come in and teach kids about how to fight fires in the home and some of the things that they need to look for so that they're prepared. District-wide, we had the MDI Sings that happened here at the high school, and that was really exciting. And we also had the 7th grade read that took place, and I was able to get over there and watch some of the activities for the 7th grade read that happened last month. And I think at all of our individual schools around food service, I have been sharing that all of our schools that run lunch programs have received funds, or haven't received funds, but because of the reimbursement amounts that are coming from the state and for the free lunches, our balances were over what they were supposed to be, and so the state sent out letters, across the state to schools, and with some ideas of how to spend those monies to, basically continue to improve our programs. So those have to go out. The list of ideas has to go out by the 17th, and those are slowly trickling in from the schools, and then I have to review them and sign them and send them off. So that is happening. We already talked about HCTC, an area of a school health. So the wellness committee is, the policy committee, one of the policies that came up to review is the wellness policy. And part of that, it's a pretty intricate process, and there's a group of people that have to meet that's defined by the policy. And so I'm going to be sending out a note, unless someone wants to raise their hand now. We need a board representative for a review of the wellness committee. So if somebody wants to sort of think about it, I'm not too sure what the commitment would be. It might be a couple meetings reviewing the current policy and then taking a look at and making, some of those changes on that policy. So if it's something that you would want to be a part of, there's going to be 8 members, be a board member, one of the school nurses. I'll be looking for one of our cooks as part of the process. There'll be a student, a community member, and a teacher, and a phys ed person. So that's the sort of team that will then look at the policy, make recommendations, and then that will come in front of this board eventually. So keep that in mind. We're sort of in the budget process, and so we've gone through a lot of preliminary budgets and a couple first drafts across the district, and so that process is moving in earnest. And at the high school, we already sort of talked about the fact that we were going to be looking at, we've already looked at redesigning the bus runs for the high school. And that process has taken place, and now Eric is meeting with those drivers to talk about and show them the new routes. And then information is going to go out to parents, because there'll be some folks, like Matt had said at the high school meeting, that you might have a Southwest Harbor bus picking up Tremont folks, or you might have a Mount Desert bus picking up Bar Harbor folks, because when we drew those new routes, they're much more efficient. And then, we'll see how those go. Like any change in bus routes, just like you experience in the summertime, there's often a little kind of hiccup as everyone's drivers and students are getting used to the routes, and then things kind of settle out, and then we'll see, what kind of impact that'll have for time in the morning, and what we could do when we're looking at the high school schedule. I think that's my report.
Are there any questions for Mike? Jerry?
For the bus routes, was that, you said you drew the routes out, did you guys do that by hand, like
Software.
other software?
There's a software that sort of, once you put in all the students and where they live, and then it finds the most efficient routes. And through that, we found that there's some better ways that we could be running our buses. And, town boundaries don't necessarily matter, because, we're all one CSD. And so that's not an issue.
What was that organization you mentioned, the clinical counselors, or is it just part of?
Oh, the crisis team.
The crisis team.
The RSS crisis team. So that's made up of guidance counselors and social workers at all of the schools, and they meet regularly, but they're called upon when things happen in our schools to support teachers or students, and so it's a super group.
Anyone else? Okay. I think that brings us to directors of teaching and learning. I see Julie.
I'll go first. Mine's shorter. Hello. Last month, we took a look at the district data for the Maine through-year assessment, and that is basically the NWA matched up against the state standards. And we shared a little bit of challenges we had, some technical difficulties, and here we are in the fall now implementing our fall testing again, and there are some challenges, and one of the greatest challenges is the timing of it all. So we are messaging as a part of MTSS, we need to assess kids, look at every kid's data so we know how to respond to them in a timely fashion. And it's not timely according to the state implementation. We used to test in September, we had more control over it. Now it's late October, and so now we're just getting around to looking at that data and putting interventions in place. So we do have just, we want you to know we're advocating, we're hearing our teachers, we are advocating. Cindy Lambert, she's our new educational technology specialist. She took the lead in writing this note to the state. We're all behind it. Rhonda and I are working with the Maine Curriculum Leaders Association and also giving feedback. That's basically all the curriculum leaders in the state trying to make this go better so that it can be more actionable. So there's that one piece. And then the other piece is the Anti-Racism Task Force is open again for applicants. It is in its, is it 4th or 5th year? I think fourth year of being in existence, and it's open to new membership. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to apply or pass it along to someone that you know might be interested. This is also part of MTSS in our sense that we are talking about creating communities of belonging. So that is part of our mission.
And then last month.
Sorry.
Julie,
Questions?
how's the student participation with that? Are you just looking for adults, or are the students?
We
filling
could
the
use
board?
students too. Listen, it started off really, robust, and now we're shrinking. So, it's been a challenge in terms of interest. So any help we could get would be great.
Including, I think, middle school.
Yes, and they have been working to reach out to recruit more middle schoolers, and those ones that they recruited before became some of our strongest leaders in high school. So that's still part of the strategy.
This is probably, like, you're gonna say yes, of course, they've already done this, this is Tom, but have you connected, like, obviously you've connected with the civil rights team here, and is there a teacher that is helping to facilitate and that maybe could, like, move people along?
Yeah, it's tricky because, yes, and some kids want to be on the civil rights team and don't want to be on the anti-racism task force. And, we have, and vice versa. So, kids don't want to be on too many, it's actually been pretty good that kids are learning their boundaries, but it tends to attract the same kids.
Right.
And yes, Miranda's in charge of the civil rights team, and she's active member on the anti-racism task force. There is a lot of overlap. Yeah.
All right, and so last month Julie walked you through the spring Main through year assessment data, and that she showed you that through the Main through year data is split up by quartiles. Right now, we still have another week before we get that information from the state. They window close November 3rd, and they take 2 weeks to just kind of fine comb the data, and then they put that information out. But we do have preliminary RIT scores, which are by quintiles. So you can see the top part is reading and the bottom part is math. It's for the whole district lumped together, so that would be through 3rd through 10th grade. And what we really are looking for is that the blue, the green, the yellow, the average, the high average, and the high, we want at least 80% of our students in those 3 ranges. And for reading this fall, we hit 80.9, which is good for us. Usually we're in the high 70s, so we've moved that reading score over that 80% mark. And part of that is the focus on science of reading, and that just reading across the curriculum focus. And for math, the high, average, and average was 76.7%. So we still have some work to do in that area, but we've really focused this year on All Learners Network, the math workshop model. All the math teachers throughout the district have an All Learners online license. We used grant money to pay for that, and they were great. The company was great and worked with us and gave us a really good discount. And so teachers have access to that resource, so they have math menus and problem solving to do, like to start the class, some lunches, and then there's also professional development that's part of that site. So we'll continue to focus on math and reading. Clearly this is tied to our Tier 1 instruction and our multi-tiered system of support. So we've still been working with our Great Schools Partnership coach, Danielle Pierre. She works with the individual school principals and MTSS teams. And she's just, looking at scheduling and structures and workflows and helping principals with their early release school-based professional development that they're doing all around Tier 1 instruction. And then, last but not least, we have our instructional coaches that are working with more small groups and individual teachers on Tier 1 instruction. So that's our fall data so far. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, well, I guess you covered it all. Okay, moving on to reorganization planning committee update.
So, right now, the reorganization committee is in the process of the individual board members that are part of that original team are reaching out to their municipalities to have conversations and make suggestions of a number to be part of the RPC, the reorganization planning committee. And so some groups are meeting this week, some have already met, and so we're slowly gathering those names, and hopefully by the end of the month we'll have that entire team named. So I've been in contact with those board members, and then they have been meeting with their municipal partners and thinking about members to join. So it's the process of communication and talking and finding the right people, and so it's moving forward a little more slowly than I thought, but I think we want to make sure that we have the right people to start those conversations.
And the website is?
The website is up, and when you go to the website, on our website, it's off on the right, and there's a drop-down menu. I'm going to speak with Lou and change it up a little bit, but right now there's information there on the various presentations we have already done. There's a place where you can click and ask questions, and then emails will come to me, and we'll be putting any newspaper reports that go in there, similar to the earlier, back in the Baldacci days. It was really successful that there was a place where all voices were heard about that process, and I think that will be similar with us to make sure that we're hearing everybody, and that's a place people will go and get information. So it'll slowly build over time, but it's information that has been shared to date is on the website now for people to look at.
Okay, moving on to discussion items. We have a couple of policies that we're bringing for first reading. So policy DJ8, purchasing and contracting, procurement, staff code of conduct, and GBI staff gifts and solicitation.
So the MSMA, Maine School Management Association, had some suggestions and just some wording changes in terms of the procurement and contracting, and making sure that conflict of interests are being disclosed, staff gift solicitation around folks who might be providing services to the schools, and so there are some changes. And then we realized in looking over our policies that we didn't have anything on staff gift solicitations in terms of gifts from businesses or gifts from parents and students. So MSMA provided us a sample copy of what that could look like, and it's up to the policy committee. We sort of talked and discussed about what would be a nominal value of when a parent gives a gift to their student's teacher, and so we put in ordinarily $50 or less as sort of being that number as being reasonable in terms of providing something, so that there isn't any appearances of impropriety that's happening. So this is an additional policy we don't have, and after we saw that we were reviewing the other one, and I had asked if we had others that might have been missing. That was one that we didn't have that other schools have, as a way of sort of protecting parents and sort of giving a sense of what's appropriate in terms of providing gifts to staff.
And it protects staff who might be put in an awkward position if someone gives them a $1,000 gift, or whatever. Hopefully not, but it's mutually protective.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or questions on this, Marie?
Yeah, one thing so I'm thinking about two things. How does should we think about what staff gifts and solicitations means in terms of like when you go on a trip or something like that, when you do the school trips? Is there anything that staff receives that is free when they go to Europe or whatever, or when you go on a staff trip? Like, do they receive free something? And should that be covered in here? Or does that, something you should think about? And then you don't have to answer, just that's something to think about.
Yeah,
Because the way this
think of
reads,
Businesses section?
sounds like
Like if you
I'm
go on
your
a-
tour company, I want you to come and I give you a free whatever ticket to the Eiffel Tower because you worked with me on this trip. Does that cover that? And then the second thing I was just wondering about, and I know this just from federal policy, if it might make sense to put like $50 for a gift, but like what does that mean? Does it mean like, so could you give a $50 gift in January and then a $50 gift in February and then a $50, is there like within a calendar year or something like that? Just to, again, be a little more protective of that gifting, put some sort of a time frame on it so that it is also reasonable in that way, because you could interpret that many ways. It could be $25, $50 gifts spread out over a year. That might, equal the $1,000 or whatever. So those would be just the two things I would say you would want to think about in this, because when I read that, those are things that pop to mind.
Kelly? No, go ahead.
I just wanted to tag along on that. I hadn't thought of that until you said that, but it was like we gave like gift certificates as the PI. Our principal wanted us to kind of like help them out and give Sherman Bookstore gift certificates. So I got thinking, okay, so if we gave those in spring, and they were only 25, but if somebody else had given them a gift, so then does that count for that school year? And then it starts over the new school year. So that is something that, maybe we could better define so that somebody doesn't think they're not in compliance.
Yes.
I think this is so valid, and I think it's like the fine print is so smart to think of that. My personal feelings just specifically on the nominal amount is, as a parent who does want to like give a Christmas gift or a holiday gift to our teacher, or like I might be so inclined to like give an end of the school year gift. I wouldn't love to be held to like, okay, I've got to like figure out how I'm going to stretch $25 for like these two. Like that would just stress me out. And I honestly feel like I want to give more. That's just me. Obviously everyone gives what they want and what they can, but maybe if we are going to set some kind of timeline, which I think we should, I think it should be at least worded so that it's addressed, so there isn't ambiguity.
Yeah.
I would personally, like, my view on it would be, can we then adjust the number, the threshold?
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll bring those back to the committee and then we'll have something back.
Second reading next month. Okay, our next item is draft fiscal year 25 budget.
That's what you're all waiting for. I'm going to start with the overview sheet, and then I'll pass it up. Well, I'll take the budgets too. But we're going to start with the overview sheet.
Is that an extra? Yeah.
So I want to start with this sheet first, and then we can dive into the budget. And these are hot off the presses. Nancy and I were still working on it. And a reminder that this is a draft. And so, we have some time to think about it and take a look at it. I'll wait until all the budgets are around. So this draft budget review is that sheet that, I'll keep coming back to when we get to the next draft, and then it'll be, when it's finalized, it'll be the sheet that we use that we had at the meeting, similar to what, our principals are using, so that we have some uniformity and sort of the understanding of the budgets in all the schools. So on mine, I like to have the timeline on the top so you could see the dates. So the draft budget is actually the 13th, not the 14th, so I got that number wrong. And then we have a revised budget in December, which is our annual meeting where it gets approved, and then we have our warrants, and then the budget meeting for the passages in January. I'm going to skip over the revenue summary part at first. I'm going to get into the four main areas. So that starts with staff and student supports. And that area is the Office of the Curriculum. So that's the Directors of Teaching and Learning and covers the budget there that supports the curriculum work that happens here. And the difference, as you can see, I have our number from our current budget and then the proposed. And the difference in that cost center is typically salaries and benefits on that one. There weren't any large differences. System administration, that is my office, operations, and the business office. So that cost center cover all of those. When we went over our review of our preliminary budget last month, I talked about there are a couple things that I was thinking about in terms of conversations with the principals' needs, whether that was someone focusing on behavior or if that was something in the area of HR. I landed on HR, human resources support for our schools for a variety of reasons. So the large increase, about 90,000 of that difference that you see over to the right is a human resources coordinator who would focus on trying to take not only some of the needs of sort of the day-to-day management of people off of the principals so that they can be instructional leaders, but also is there to help sort of support the business office and take some of the HR, because right now in our office, HR is kind of spread out through everybody that's in that office, from Karen to Selena to the folks in the business office to even our business manager who's trying to manage all of our budgets and get those done in a timely manner. And actually, Nancy and I had a meeting with the League of Towns and we sort of talked about our business office and the need of making sure they get timely information back for audits, because it's a lot, and auditors are here now and have been working all last week and this week to make sure that the numbers that end up going to the towns are audited numbers. And actually some of our towns, well, one has, they cannot hold a town meeting unless they have an audited budget. And at that meeting, it was clear that, that's a lot of work for the business office, and that group voted to support whatever we needed to do on the AOS side in terms of making sure that audits can be done in a timely manner and having support for our business office. And part of this HR position is looking at providing support within the office to take some of the things off of those folks that are doing that, so their focus can be solely on focusing on the payroll and paying the bills in that part, and also in supporting of principals. It can cover two areas. And so that's why that piece, and that's why I ended up in there. So I wanted to make sure that you sort of had an understanding. I have a rough draft of a position outline, a job description that I'll share with folks. I still have to meet with people and make sure that it's hitting all the right spots. And then I want to be able to sort of share it with you once I have that all down. But I also...
Can I just add something?
Go ahead.
Like that this is something that we've talked about for years and that would really be also really helpful to supporting teachers and their needs to have their, if they're having an issue with their health insurance plan or whatever, like, that it's really a needed thing that's been on the back burner for a long time.
And it creates consistency amongst, whether it's leave requests or whether it's questions about the contract and what things you can and can't do, what you can ask for. And so there's sort of that piece of it as well. And so I see it as hitting a bunch of different pieces that's in support of administrators, in support of teachers, and by the way, in support of towns. And so that's why that's in there, and that's probably one of the major pieces of the budget. And I didn't know, I was going to ask if any of the principals, I did give them wait time because good teaching, to sort of address,
I did put down a few notes.
to talk a little bit about the support human resources would provide for them in their work. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Heather. So I've been a big proponent of the HR question that has been posed. And some of the thoughts that I had just in the last few minutes is that the HR department is much more than a payroll person, and that's kind of our current arrangement, and that's really difficult for us. It's kind of became a game of telephone from the staff to me to whoever's in the district office. I have to figure out who it is that I'm supposed to be talking with, back to me, and if you've ever sent me an email, you know that could take a few days, and then back to the staff member. And so it does take time, and a lot of this has to do with hourly wage changes or insurance, and these are timely issues. And so by adding days and sometimes a week, depending on if it's a 4-day week or something, I do spend an inordinate amount of time with the hiring process, more so in the summer now. And with the way that our salary scale is and the hourly scale and the support staff, I often misquote during interviews. And not because I don't have the information right in front of me, but it changes. And Selena, you kind of know, I'm always emailing you. But again, that is me having an interview, having to email the district office, them getting back to me. And it's just, like I said, the game of telephone. I have had some HR issues that we had to seek out legal counsel. That would be Melissa Huey from Southern Drummond. But it didn't need to go to legal. They were just HR questions. And so we paid extra money to have my questions answered, where really it was just a simple HR question. Well, not simple, but like me. I also think that this would improve my relationship both with staff, but specifically the teachers unions, because a lot of times if there is a question or a disagreement on hourly wage or what the hour should be, or what the what we're asking a teacher or a staff member to do, that it sounds like my answers are almost subjective when I talk with them, whereas an HR department could easily answer these questions and resolve the issues in a real professional way. And not that I'm not professional, I don't want to say that I'm not, but again, I'm not an HR person, just like I'm not a tech person and I'm not an algebra teacher. But I do feel that this is an area that, because of the size of our district and the number of employees that we have, that I think if we looked around at other companies, that having an HR department, I think, would be invaluable for us, more as, I almost feel like the teachers and the staff would feel that way too. That it's just an outlet to get information, accurate information. And I would think that with our current system, that we almost are putting ourselves in jeopardy with the way that we communicate with staff on HR issues. So, I'm open for questions, but that's kind of my feeling.
Thank you.
And so that's, a big bump when looking at this budget when we go back to the budget differences, and then what that looks like for assessment is through, my office and the addition of HR.
I have a question. What are other AOSs? How are they structured? Do they have HR departments or HR staff?
Mostly, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And is it one person? Because just what you're describing from, this is being handled across the district by a lot of different people, as inefficient as it is, but it's also one person. It just sounds like it's a lot of things that could one person handle that?
And taking a look at some of the other similarly sized schools that have HR person, it seems like, and that's why I got to take some time and take a look at my list of things. in terms of making sure that it's appropriate. But we do have excellent staff that have expertise. And so in terms of what things can stay where they are, but what things can come off so those individuals can be more efficient in their job. That's my next step, is sort of working with them about, well, what part of this that we know is really important and can be done by an individual that would have that position.
Just to piggyback on your question, because I think it's really valid, and obviously, to me, it almost seems like a liability waiting to happen, not having someone have the credibility managing this kind of stuff. Just like as this entity, like making sure we're covered. Maybe we could prepare like a bullet point of like, hey, all these other districts in the state have this type of role, or this is, because for maybe the select few people that might have pushback, where we, if we're showing this is very standard, it's just something it sounds like we've made do without, but to the detriment of people's actual jobs, and obviously, just to be able to kind of say, hey, this is normal, this is common, and we've sort of paid our dues not having that, but now it's time to.
So it kind of sounds like you're gonna bring one person in under you in your department. It's not gonna be like a third party, and it'll be one person, as you mentioned, for all schools. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the model right now. I know in the past we had looked at outside companies, but it was really difficult to find one to be able to do that. So that's why I kind of reached out to similarly sized schools to sort of take a look at what what their offices look like. And of course, the difference is a lot of those schools were RSUs, so there's a little bit of efficiency that's sort of been built into that process where we're an AOS, and so that makes it a little bit more interesting.
I guess I would be concerned if it was just one person to serving all the schools, if they're doing payroll, and the concern of taking a couple days to address emergent issues. But I also agree it's a huge liability not having HR. I wear red lipstick every day, and I know Principal DeGrasse hates red lipstick, and I didn't get a raise, and it can be all. I've heard crazier things leading people. So I agree, it's a great thing that.
Right now, the current model is our payroll people are doing HR, and I would want to pull some of that so the payroll people can focus strictly on the payroll, and actually pull some of the payroll off of Nancy, who should be focusing more on the overall budget pieces, because she does part of HR for the high school. She does some of the payroll, and she oversees, she's the business manager for all of our schools, and it does, of course, does a fabulous job. But it's a big job. So I'll be refining that a little bit more, but I wanted to make sure that was a sort of big part of the budget. In terms of student and staff support, that is sort of the technology. And so just a reminder that we've restructured our technology, and we've always had, over the last couple of years through and after the pandemic, we had 4 people in that position, in those positions, and one of those positions was covered through some of the ESSER funds, and as you know, we've been sort of transitioning out of those. And so, right now, part of that $83,000 difference that you see there, part of that is the salary for the IT lead. And as a refresher, we have sort of our IT lead that covers sort of the network operations of all of our schools across the district. Julie had mentioned Cindy Lambert, who is the ed lead and has been doing a fabulous job and sort of helping us, talk about helping us through a transition into Schoology and supporting teachers in that process, and supporting our office in that transition. Any transition to a new system, a learning system, is gonna, it's gonna take a little while, and it's gonna take some understanding. And students are going to go through that when they go to college. They'll have a whole new system to learn. When we're trying to find the one that works best for us, and she has been, just really helpful in supporting teachers and administrators on that ed side. And then we have Wendell, who's sort of our part-time and does some of that overarching support for the IT, and then we have our data support, and that's sort of Elaine. And so those 4 people are still there. And so, but that ESSER funds have gone away, and so now we're picking that up ourselves. Special education, that covers the areas of our directors, our psychological services providers, our OT, PT services, and the social worker who sort of 20% position that supports all the guidance folks in our schools. And so that's mostly salaries and benefits and some additional new testing materials. You'd be surprised how much testing materials can cost as they upgrade those. And so as you turn over, before I get to the summary, I'll just talk about our reserves, our special education reserve. As you've heard me talk at all our preliminary budget meetings, the AOS reserve is at its peak, and so no schools will be adding to that, so that's at $750,000. We do have a fund for our deductible and coverages and fees, and then we have our curriculum fund, which sort of supports the work that we do around our PD days and bringing folks in. That's assessed through each school toward a charge per student. And then the directors of curriculum and teaching and learning sort of use that funds as part of their curriculum work. So as a summary, our budget to budget, with all of those pieces in there, and just a first look is a 12% increase, and an increase for assessment would be 10.33. And I did put in there what we had sort of last year as our increases, both in our budget to budget and our assessment, so you had that. So, like I said, this is sort of our first, Nancy and I just sort of finished this, and I'll have to go back and go through it again before I bring it to you all. So those pieces, if you were to go into the budget line by line, those things that I sort of quickly stated around where do you see those increases in the student and staff support, that's mostly salaries and benefits, system administration, about 90,000 of that, and that's a mix of salary and benefits. Is this additional HR? The student staff support is the salary piece for our tech as we absorb that. And then the rest is just those salary and benefit increases.
Carrie?
Does it make any sense to, and I don't even know if it's allowed, to use, since we're maxed out on our special ed reserve, to use any of that to maybe offset the special ed increase and just bring this down a little bit?
I don't think it's designed, you can't use it for that.
Can't use it for that,
Yeah,
okay.
the rules that are around that.
Anyone else?
And Nancy and I this week will work out what that assessment looks like, so you have a sense for your communities. I think we've been, putting in the first budget that we did a first draft on, I think we put in 10% before we even built the budget in terms of what the assessment looks like for the individual schools. But we'll have more details this week, and I'll send some spreadsheets out so you can see that. Right.
Is there any hypothetical that it might be less than 12% based on what you're saying with your little tweaking?
We'll see. I need to, I think I spent, Nancy and I went through it really quickly. We got everything together. And so, I need to spend some more time, really looking at line by line. That's my next sort of step for, part of this week is really taking a look at that part.
Okay, we have no action items. Is there any other business? Future agenda items, we will certainly have our usual reports and updates and the policies we discussed above. We'll have, of course, the next phase of the budget process. Marie?
Can we get a report about the high school building project?
Do you want to do that here, or should I put that on the high school?
I don't know, wherever you so desire. It was, wasn't sure which meeting it was going to be in, but it was in either, so.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. What else? Well, and Selena has her list, so she works her magic on our, like, making sure that we cover the right things at the right time of year if we forget something, but, which could happen, but,
It's in your handbooks as well.
yeah,
What, the list?
The list.
and a list of like what we cover in each month. But in case we forget to consult our handbook sometime.
So when the message goes out.
Human handbook.
In the off chance that happens. So, that brings us to, is there any other public comment? And I'm not aware of any coming over the email, so. Our next meeting will be Monday, 11 December 2023, probably at 6, but monitor your email. Now, we will have an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 40560 contract negotiations. Is there a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?